We are going live.
We're live.
Hello.
We're live.
The rest of the world. It's good to be with you all. The American Awakening Squad with some special guests today. We're going to have a great show. We're going to have a great show mainly because I'm going to turn over the hosting reins to Jeff Bethke. Now, there's other reasons it's going to be a good show, including the fact we're going to have David Bailey of Erebon with us. But the fact that Jeff Bethke is going to be running the show for most of it, that's a really good show.
That makes me nervous.
Right?
Make you guys nervous too.
No pressure. So let's get to Josh Jacob to bring us in with a little worship, Josh.
Thank you, John. Happy Friday, everyone. And the cool thing about the show is I've been getting into the hymns a little bit more. So here's another one. And here we go. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that caused the Lord of bliss to bear the dreadful curse for my soul, for my soul. To bear the dreadful curse, oh my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down. When I was sinking down beneath God's righteous frown, Christ laid aside his crown for my soul, for my soul. Christ laid aside his crown, oh my soul. Oh my soul. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing on, I'll sing on. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing on. And when from death I'm free, oh, I'll sing on joyfully. And through eternity, I'll sing on, I'll sing on. And through eternity, oh, I'll sing on. Oh, we'll sing on. And George and Brianna and all of us will sing on.
That's good. Woo. Bringing that home this morning.
Thank you.
Awful.
Thank you, Josh. Really appreciate you. Appreciate showing up with you all the time. We've been doing this since the beginning of Corona. The time keeps getting better and better together. I'll tell you, just for everybody to get somebody who's hitting a keyboard pretty aggressively there. I don't know who it is, but please.
Sounds like a keyboard from like the 1950s. It's like a keyboard plus static or something.
It's an old typewriter, like one of those.
Yeah.
All right, so as I was reflecting, other than keyboard tapping, it's wonderful to be with these guys every single day. It gets better all the time. You know, just to set the stage here, we showed up at the beginning of Corona to go daily because of Marissa Prince's vision that we should do this, speak a good word out to the world. It got better and better and better as the world was declining. Jointly, the opportunity to speak into that was special, so special. Thank you, Marissa, for inspiring us to do that. Thank you for everybody for showing up. And then with this last turn, the last 3 weeks in America, the pain of that, it's gotten even more touching and more poignant. And I'm encouraged even more to be with you, friends, because our whole story was about being together the entire time. That was the reason why we're showing up, to say, God's got a word for us. The word is that we're supposed to be together. Ultimately, we're going to transcend all of these differences. Death and despair does not have the final word. God's got the final word. He's got the final word for all of us together. Mm-hmm. And so we now have the opportunity, having launched in Corona, now speaking into this America moment, we have the opportunity to speak about a book that's coming out in 8 weeks on exactly all these topics. And we're calling these special segments on the book American Awakening in Focus. And we're going to walk through the book, and that's what Jeff Bethy's going to host us with. And special guest David Bailey is going to come here on screen. I think we're going to rotate Josh Jacob out. Yeah, I see Josh Jacob going. Oh, David Bailey, hello.
Hey, there he is.
How you doing? How you doing? Good to see you.
Take it easy, bro. Shaming us with that hat. That's too fresh.
He's always shaming us with his look. You know that.
I know.
So for you, though, those of you folks who are going to hear this on pod, you are not getting the benefit of the full David Bailey experience, which is his hat and an awesome shirt and a really great mic, too. So that's just part of the David Bailey package. So David is a special partner to us, and during the Corona period, he's been joining us on daily prayer calls, which is so meaningful to us. David is playing a crucial role these days in America, just doing the work he's been doing forever, and it's needed now. It's always needed, but right now, the need for David Bailey is acute, special, and thank you for being you, David. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
So before we get to the heart of the good stuff here, we're going to get a little appetizer good stuff with Pastor Joel and the Daily Dose. Over to you, Joel Searby.
All right. Yeah, that's right. The really good stuff is coming in a little bit with David, but I always want to bring you guys a little bit of light and life and hope. I've been talking to a lot of my brothers and sisters of color, and I've heard an inordinate number of people say that they have not been sleeping well. And I was thinking about a story, one of my favorites in the Bible, the story of Daniel. And there's a part in that story that I had kind of forgotten about. And I was reading back through it. You see, Daniel has been sentenced to death, essentially. He's going into the lion's den. And if you remember, the king was actually very fond of Daniel. He respected him a lot. And so the king is really distraught over this whole thing. And after they threw Daniel in the lion's den, this is what it says about the king. The king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him. And he could not sleep. It's a strange scene to me, because here's the one guy apparently who could probably save Daniel, and yet he does nothing. He just simply endures a sleepless night. And, I find myself angry at the king, like, dude, why didn't you save him? Why didn't you do more? And I'm sure the context and the study would help me understand that more, but I can't help but feel so frustrated with the king. But then the next morning comes and it reveals that the king actually had this kind of nascent or growing or young faith. And this is what it says. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually been able to rescue you from the lions?" Here he had been clearly hoping that God was going to save Daniel, and who knows, but it seems like maybe he was trying to figure this out, and he laid awake all night wondering, is this God of Daniel real? Could he save a man from lions? And if he does, what am I going to do? Now, I know a lot of my friends like David and Marissa and other friends of color, are not paralyzed like the king in no action. They're taking serious action to help lift our nation. But I do wonder if there's some deep lessons here for us, that when we feel helpless, or indeed we are helpless and unable to sleep because we feel so distraught, maybe early in the morning, like the king, while it's still dark, we could approach the den, yea, the tomb, with hope that there is a life inside, that what Satan intended for evil, God actually intended for good. And what Satan intended for death actually is life. And that's my hope, that's my prayer, that even in the sleepless nights, we can find the life that is truly life in Jesus. And that's your daily dose. Back to you guys.
That's
Man, that's good.
good, Joel. Thank you so much.
Really good.
Yeah, I am the reason I'm sputtering here, but the reason we're on this show is because we're all looking for that life that is truly life together. We know it's out there. It can be very elusive at times. When the darkness falls and you feel like you're really in the deepest dark of night, we can forget that the light is out there. But thank you for reminding us, Joel, that it is there. So thanks so much, brother. All right, we are going to move over to Jeff Bethany. Before we do that, I'm going to say one thing about the rest of the run of show. Jeff's going to run it for a while here, and then we're going to. If you came here to watch Brandon Heath and Dan Hazeltine, they'll be here in a little bit too. So we're going to have some great music at the end of the show after Jeff takes us through. Jeff, over to you, friend.
Yes, I'm excited to be with you guys. And if you don't know what this is or where you're tuning in from, we're going to be talking about John's book, American Awakening, the next 8 weeks on the Fridays. So if you're listening on the stream, you have context. If we pull this out and put it somewhere else, now you know what we're talking about. And I'm so excited to chat with you guys and David, John, Marissa, Calvin, Joel, whoever's kind of joining on the convo. It's an honor, and I think it's crazy. I was rereading. I mean, I read this, I don't know, January earlier this year. I can't remember when you gave me the first peek, but to read it again and go back through it a little bit last night, just thinking about some questions, it is fascinating how something can be so pertinent when it wasn't written for that moment, you know? But it was, and it wasn't. And so I just love that's how the Lord works. So we're going to be talking about chapter 1. And so, yeah, so one thing I just want to talk about with you guys, if we want to bring everyone else back on screen, is, which, by the way, what are we calling this? We're calling this the American Awakening Book Club. What are we calling it? American Awakening Spotlight, American Awakening Best 30 Minutes of Your Life every Friday. What are we calling this thing?
Focus.
In focus.
American.
Okay, there we go. I just didn't read the email. American Awakening in Focus. There you go. There you go.
I think it's fair to say that the naming rights are still out there, right?
Exactly. And hey, I get grace because I don't wake up and do much else besides hop on the stream because it's still 6 a.m. where I live. So, you win some, you lose some right there. But for those, I did. So I'm just going to be the question asker. That's all I'm going to try to be for the next 20-something minutes. And one place I wanted to start, and maybe David, even you can take this one just because I think your work is so specific to this regard, is one question I was thinking about last night. John, you use this example of the Romans and the concrete, right, to start off the book. I love it. I remember reading that, and I didn't know that. I'd never actually heard that, but I had kind of actually seen similar things with just their architecture and all that, where there was a regression in society after Romans because they had lost so many things. Didn't know the concrete one specifically. But one question specifically now with this moment we're in with the race conversation and racial tension is, my thought was, man, what is that concrete in regards to this question? Meaning, can we point to anything in the past, theologically, culturally, whether it's in the church, whether it's in the globe? Is there any place we can learn from other countries that we obviously have lost the recipe for what actually is unity and for what is actually reconciliation and what is actually goodness? And so, David, I don't know if you got any thoughts on that, but when I was reading that, I was just like, what is the concrete today? What is it in the past? Is there anything we can learn or point to of like, oh, this wisdom 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago can maybe help us pull us through in this moment? But I don't know what you guys would say.
Well, man, I guess I'll jump in, and it's a bunch of wise people on this call, so we'll see what they have to say also. But first of all, thanks again for having me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I think the first thing to do is remember the social context of the way the scripture was written in. Particularly like Jesus was under occupation of the Roman government, the greatest empire of his day. And so, he was kind of like what Black folks were like during the Jim Crow time. They were second-class citizens. And if you look at kind of Paul, who ended up being like an apostle to the Gentiles, he was a Jewish person that was kind of like Jesus, like Black folks during the 60s, the second-class citizens. Also began to like share the gospel and spread the kingdom to people who were Gentiles, people who were also privileged in the society. So when you look at the scripture in Romans, where it says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, I think that's a recipe. I think it's a recipe that says, like, don't be conformed to the ways of the empire, but be transformed by the perspective of the kingdom of God.
Mm.
And it's really interesting because that text kind of talks out this kind of like philosophical like way of life. And then if you go throughout the rest of the text, it gives some practical stuff. So like loving your neighbor, loving your enemy. It also brings in stuff like mourn with those who mourn and rejoice with those who rejoice. And like how to be present. So you could be in this very moment and be like, why are people so angry? Why are people so sad? Why can't we just get over this? But if you're a believer, you're called to mourn with those who are mourning. You're also called to like rejoice with those who are rejoicing. So I think those are some recipes, because if we could have some more empathy, if we could kind of see our country not as the kingdom of God, but a place where it's more like Rome than it is the kingdom of God. I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
we can then know that, hey, we need to kind of bring some goodness to this context, not expect goodness to come out of this context.
That's a good point. Well, I love too, even because Romans, 12 through, I mean, I think the key text most people go to is like Ephesians, 3, 4, 5. But yeah, you're right. Romans 12 through 15 is very pertinent to this moment in not only the vision, but then the practicals it gives. Anyone else?
Well, could somebody just sort of recount for folks the actual story that you're talking about, Jeff? I don't want people to miss this idea of the concrete.
Well, great. John, it's your book. You tell us real quick. You bring us that goodness.
Okay. So Nick Christakis, this was a first, I first saw it in Nick Christakis' excellent book called Blueprint. And the storyline is as follows, that, and it's a metaphor, folks. I mean, it's not a literal, like we want good concrete. That's not the point of the story. But the idea that we pick up in the book is that the Romans had extraordinary concrete, the best concrete that's ever been made. I mean, look at the Colosseum; it still exists, right? I mean, the concrete we pour now, give it 10 years and it's gone, right? And so what was astonishing about it was that at some point later on in the empire, that they couldn't make it anymore. They'd somehow lost the recipe to creating extraordinary concrete, and so it was a lost thing forever and ever and ever. And finally, recently, it was unearthed. There was this combination of water meeting the concrete formation with this aluminous tobramite. I think I've got it right, but close enough. You have to look in the book to get it right, and so basically, it was a special concoction, this unique way of bringing it together, which eventually scientists unearthed, archaeologists and scientists unearthed. And the metaphor is as follows. We are in a moment in America, even before Corona, even before the last 3 weeks, where fundamentals have been lost about who we are and why we exist and what our purpose is. And I mean, in areas like racial relations and reconciliation, I would argue the actual concrete has never been poured in one place in time in a way that was like enduring. And we want to go back to that. So to answer your original question, Jeff, I don't have a time in history where I say, oh yeah, they got it completely right then. They nailed it. It's more an aspirational idea, but the concrete formula that has never yet been followed in a society or culture yet, in my experience or my knowledge anyway, is in line with what David was saying.
Yes.
So David's bringing the concrete formula. Never existed in a society or culture. Yeah, but that is the concrete formula. That is exactly what we're supposed to recall, the forgotten foundations. At one point, the book was going to be entitled "Forgotten Foundations," and then remind us of these things. But thank you, David, for bringing that good word.
That's true. Well, I mean, I think that's a tension too, even with our culture right now. Of are we believing that we're trying to recover something we've lost, or are we trying to find something that's never been there before? Does that make sense? And I think those questions kind of take you different places. And especially, I think the world has a different answer to that than Christians, because at some level, we're kind of recovering what we've lost, the original vision that we see, like David was talking about, yet we have to be able to take it into a new possibility that we haven't seen yet before play out, So that's good. Okay,
well,
go ahead, Marissa.
Oh, I was just going to say, I hate to be Debbie Downer, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever have been on the show, but and I hope I'm not now. But I don't know if the brothers and sisters of faith that I hold hands with at church, or that I've encountered, or that I see, I don't know if I actually believe that we're any different from the rest of the world. When it comes,
I didn't say we look different. I just said I think theologically probably have a different answer. But yeah.
well, but even I mean, like, I feel like we're at this point in history. Like, you pull back the curtain, the jig is up, the emperor's got no clothes. I think it's important that we like get really honest right now, right? Just like human nature, we are all reaching for the comfort of what we've known.
Yeah.
As opposed to being bold and courageous and willing to step out onto some water that don't nobody say you can walk on. There's this tension that I don't know that, Lord help, I pray we're even pulling in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because, some people would say we're sitting in some, we're sitting in something right now where if that had been true, that we could successfully live in this tension, maybe we wouldn't be here right now. And so, again, I think the jig is up, people. I think like, if we're going to go in another direction together, if we're going to be building something together, we have the perfect opportunity to lay it all on the table and just be honest that maybe even as people of faith, I don't know that we've figured out how to hold this tension. And of course, like, not to perfection, but like just us and ourselves and our hearts. Are we holding this tension well, just even personally, I don't know.
Maybe that's the first step in the formula. Being actually really honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Do we even want this? Do we even want to live by these principles, right? And figure out what would it look like to step into the unknown.
Can I just jump in with one quick point on that before you take more substantive stuff here than I will take on? But Calvin and me and Marissa have been doing this together for almost 2 years now. We sometimes look at each other and, one of us or the other will say, I don't know if I really want this. I mean, if I'm doing an honest gut check, am I willing to pay the price for this? Yeah. And I have total respect for any one of us who says it at any given time, because you're like, yeah, good point. I mean, I think I do, but do I really? I mean, am I really to count the cost of putting aside my own comfort, my own desire, my own natural, whatever my natural thing is, and extend myself? Sorry, David, go. What do you, friend?
No, I mean, I think that's kind of key to Christian theology, right? Like, transformation in Christian theology goes from the inside out, and so, like, we're transforming people to hopefully transform society. I think I think it can be a very dangerous thing when human beings transform society with the ideal of way the society ought to look without doing self-examination of themselves. And unfortunately, there oftentimes are Christians that will fall into that lie, that false reality. And really, it's really my transformation of my own kind of soul and space, and to ask these hard questions like, hey, is this what I really want? Like, what I see in the scriptures, or the ideal of like unity and diversity, do I really want to see that? Well, scriptures also tell you how to get there, right? You get there through self-sacrifice. You get there through thinking about others more than you think about yourselves, versus trying to conform other people into what you want them to be. And so that's a very it's a humble that makes us have to rely on God versus rely on our own strength and power, which is very different.
That's good. I love that. Look at us, guys. One question, take up like 14 minutes. That's just how we do it. Probably got time for one more. I love that, though. One last thing I'll say that all you guys just remind me of at the end, Marissa specifically. I think you're right, Marissa. I think there is a level at which this is it's sad how long of a chance the church has had in the West to even have elementary level skills at this. And we haven't even reached that. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't even gone to kindergarten yet. And I do think a lot of but historically there has been pockets of Christian communities that have been strong witnesses of this moment in this theology, but we haven't tended to see that in America specifically. And I think a lot of that has to do with the syncretism of Christianity with American nationalism and the narrative that actually how it was born, how it was tooled. And so that's a huge problem that has to be undone, you know, and has to be kind of unwounded, or a knot that has to be undone before we can even get to that kindergarten level. But here's a second question I wanted to ask you guys. And this is one I was wrestling with yesterday. What is it, page 16? So if you guys don't know, in John's book, chapter 1 is phenomenal. I love, John, how you kind of lay out this almost this indictment level. I don't know if that's the right word, but you kind of you're laying out the problem of like, hey, this is we are in a dark time, and there's plenty of stats to back that up with depression, anxiety, substance abuse, all these different types of things, lack of meaning, lack of purpose. But one section that was, I thought, again, pertinent to this moment, even though you weren't writing about it, that I was wrestling through is, you know, you talked about, you spent a paragraph or two on the age of disinformation, how we are in an age now that is really hurting us because it's not just misinformation, but we're in an age of like disinformation. It's fragmented, it's pulling in different ways. And I think that's, man, how do we wrestle with, you know, studying ourselves to be, you know, approved and think and read and listen while also not making sure how easy it is to get swept up in this wave of disinformation that's taking us wrong places. Does that kind of make sense? And that's a question that I'm wrestling with all the time, is like, because the easy answer to disinformation is to say, well, just be ignorant then, but that can't be the answer. That obviously can't be the answer. So what is the answer if those are kind of the two options that we know are wrong?
Well, I'm going to jump in for just 1 second, which is just to say that for folks that are being introduced to the book and the concept now, the point of the beginning is just to talk a little bit about the badness. So the rest of it we could talk about the goodness. Right?
Exactly.
Because there's a lot of books out there right now about the badness, because the badness seems to be, you know, kind of all encompassing about the spiritual, you know, darkness of the day. But on this point, before we try to figure out and provide solutions, you know, for folks, just to say, I mean, like I am going to be straight up and say there is a dark spirit running amok in the West right now of people who don't even want to figure out what's true, and that's a spiritual blindness that. Yeah. Look, I'm not blaming anybody in particular. Right this minute anyway. But another time I might. But it's basically it's so pervasive. And I don't see people of faith being much better. So I mean, what are the first?
Almost worse sometimes.
What are the very first principles of being, a child of God? Someplace right up at the top has to be a desire to be truthful, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes right at the top has to be like to honor something which is true versus something that's untrue. That's part of, what makes us human beings. C.S. Lewis said, ask the question, are we men or are we rabbits? Which is an odd formulation, but the idea is like, hey, we're human beings. Human beings want to be truthful, and that's what we got. It's in our bones. And right now, people are like, whatever. I'm not looking for truth.
Yeah. So that's something I'm wrestling with right now, especially because you want to learn about certain issues and you want to dig in, but how do you make sure that you're, leaning in the right way and not kind of being disinformed by a narrative? But I do agree there's a powerful spirit on both sides that just pushes the narrative rather than truth.
Well, because real talk, right? Again, we're believers. We're talking from a faith perspective. If there is a truth, and that truth means that you, in whatever you are, in some way needs to shift. Like, why would you really, right? Like, is it really in your interest to believe that there's a truth? And so, like, I think, right, there's a when you talk about like a spiritual blindness where it's like we don't even want that to me takes me right back to scripture in terms of, without a vision, the people cast off restraint. Like there's like, what is this larger vision that we are really believing for, that we're buying into, that we are living for, so that you would even be willing to lay down your stuff to hold up the mantle of a truth, something that is like maybe not in your interest, but come what may, I'm gonna hold it up. I'm
gonna take that one step further. What about, again, if it says the truth will set you free, right? So then, do we want freedom, real freedom? Do we even want to step into that? Because again, if I absolutely agree. If we haven't even tasted that yet, what true freedom is, like, And so to step into that, but we have yet to taste. Do we even want that? And I think the misinformation, the lack of truth, even points to that.
Yeah, David, how do you answer this one, David? Because you're on the ground, boots on the ground, doing specific work, racial reconciliation. That's one issue of many, but that issue specifically suffers from disinformation. How do you even begin coaching people on a 1v1 scale of just hey, that you literally just kind of believe crap. That's just
right. Well, I mean, I think one of it is that particularly since I do this work amongst Christians, I actually don't use the phrase that I use do the work of racial reconciliation. I let people know, hey, I do the work of reconciliation, and we apply it to maybe race, class, and culture.
Amen. Yeah.
But I think there's I use a theological term. The world was whole and then it was broken, and ever since Genesis 3, God has been in the process of trying to bring healing and repair and to the broken world that we're in. And so, and many of us are if you imagine reconciliation almost like a puzzle piece, and then all these different fractured pieces. Each of us have our own piece that we need to put together. And I think a lot of times we could dismiss one another because your piece doesn't look like my piece. And so I say that your piece isn't legitimate. My piece is the only one that is legitimate. But really, God's the one that sees the big picture, and God's the one that's putting us all together in ways that it should fit. And so when it comes to practically, whether it's from somebody on the left or the right, or somebody consistent moderate, whether politically or theologically liberal or progressive or conservative, what I found is that more people are concerned with being right than they are being righteous. And when you're a Christian, you need to be more concerned about being righteous than being right.
Yes.
And so this is where the importance of nobody cares if Jeff or David, God doesn't care if Jeff or David is right or wrong in a situation. What God cares about are we positioning ourselves to be transformed, right?
Yeah.
And that transformational process should be the thing that David and Jeff should be concerned about when we have conflict. And to be able to realize that Jeff and David doesn't have the corner on truth. Whatever situation that's going on, I do not have the 100% absolute thing of truth, even though I feel like I do. But I need the scriptures tell me that I don't. So I need to be a seeker of truth, and that God's a rewarder of those that are diligently seek God, And so one of the things that we really try to do is really try to help people to say hey, this isn't from the scriptures, but this is from my grandma. She says the biggest room in the world is room for improvement. So I try to help you understand, hey, you might be doing the best as you can, but the biggest room in the world is room for improvement. And if you're listening to the same source about everything that's going on, and the answer is right now, we don't say the answer is this particular problem. The answer is you. If you're a Republican, the answer is you. If you're white, and the problem with race is you, and you can't change that.
Yeah.
But you can change philosophy, you can change thought, you can change behaviors. There's a lot that you can change. And that's the thing that we try to do, is try to say, hey, the biggest room for improvement. If you're Christian, we're all supposed to be about transformation. And we don't have absolute 100% understanding of all truths. And so let work with the Holy Spirit to make yourself transform. Allow yourself to be transformed.
That's good. That's good. Before, John, I think we're going to toss back to you with any closing thoughts, but I love that, David. Two things that stood out to me right there is what I was hearing you say too, which I think Christians need to heed more, is you can say the right thing as an agent of darkness. You know what I mean? Meaning you can be saying the truth, but being from a very wrong kingdom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think Jesus was clear on that. I mean, there was a scholar I read a long time ago that had such a fascinating point where he basically said, on paper, Jesus was exceptionally close to the Pharisees. That was actually probably who he was closest to theologically. Wow. Sadducees, Zealots, etc. But obviously, when you read the text, they're the biggest enemy, because of the way at which they would go about things, right? Because of the way at which their truth was, bludgeoning people. And so I just think that's a fascinating thing to think about. And then second, I loved what you said. There is an element where truth is not relative, but truth is what's the right word? It factors different ways. Do you know what I mean? And the whole picture is beautiful. I think it was A.W. Tozer who used the example of a diamond, right? Depending on how the sun hits that diamond, it's going to shoot out different ways, but it's one diamond. And that's the character and nature of God, but also the character and nature of truth. And I think that's really powerful.
Good.
Yeah. So that's a good reminder. But yeah, John, how are we doing on time? What do you think? You want to close us out?
Oh, I hate to close out conversations like
We got
this.
2 questions in. That was phenomenal.
I love you so much. I love your input. Oh, I love your Jeff, your shepherding. I think one thing that occurs as we shift gears here is Calvin said, is the truth will set you free? Do we want to be set free? Do we want truth? Well, we've talked about this a lot on our show. That path to truth is death to self. The path to freedom is dying to yourself, and nobody wants to die to themselves, even though that's the path to freedom.
That's real.
And that is, of course, is all caught up and bound up in all the observations David made, right? Which is like, look, I mean, bottom line, everything David just talked about was, the umbrella it's under is dying to yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's not me. I'm not the right answer. And finding the path, which is to give up your own life. He will save his own life, will lose it, all that sort of thing, unless seed falls to the ground. All those wonderful words of the New Testament, on that is the path to the truth. That is the path to freedom. And are we willing to go that path? I don't know.
Preach, JK. Let's go.
Well, I think if you look out at this moment right now and you see the vitriol and the hate and all that stuff, you can almost look behind that person's eyes and say, they don't want to die. That's what it is.
Totally.
That's what it is.
Absolutely.
They don't want to die right now. And that's if they don't know the Lord, then you understand it. But that is, that's the counterintuitive nature of the kingdom of that. When you die, then you resurrect, and then there's new life, and then there's new creation.
And maybe that'll inform all of us, not only for our own decisions going forward, anybody who's listening, but also maybe your prayer life for the people that are on the other side, and see the path of true freedom. I'm just, like so many other great moments and doing the show with you guys, I arrive at a new place, and this is a new place. I never thought about it that way. All right, so the person is unwilling to die. They're holding on tight. They don't want true freedom. Maybe I can pray for true freedom for them. I don't know.
No, that's a powerful thing. And I don't want us to lose that, right? Because we're people who believe in the power of prayer. And we're looking out, we're seeing a lot of pain, we're seeing a lot of fear about a future that no one knows is to come. If you've never tasted true freedom, you don't know how really good it is. You're just kind of hoping, right?
You're hoping.
Like, Lord, help us to pray. Help us to really be praying for ourselves and each other, for what we really need, for the peace and the freedom to let go.
That's good.
Well, thank you, Marissa. That's such a good word. And I like to ask everybody out there, to pray for David, as in particular, who's doing this every hour in the hour these days. He always has been, but right now the burdens are heavy on brothers and sisters that are in the front lines of this. Some of my teammates are in the same category. I ask for prayer for my teammates that are carrying enormous burdens and trying to build these bridges right now. So God bless you, David Bailey, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Keep on keeping on, man.
And for those watching, what is it? Arabon.com?
ARRABON. Yeah, that's it. ARRABON. Arabon.com.
Yeah.
Tasting what is to come.
If you haven't run into David Bailey before, you're going to see a whole lot more of him out there, and hopefully there's a lot more of him in our world as well.
There it is.
Looking forward to it, friend. All right, we're going to move off over to the music. Thank you, Jeff Bethke. Thank you, David Bailey. Let's move over to the music. Dan Hazeltine and Brandon, come on in, friends.
Hey there. Great to be here with you from Nashville. Love the conversation as usual. My musical guest today is a good friend of mine. Brandon Heath is with us. And just a little about Brandon. I'm sure you probably already know about him, but he's got quite a few records out, 6 studio albums, Grammy nominated, Dove Award winning. I like to, when I think about Brandon and his songwriting, a few words come to mind, but one is very personal. His songwriting is uncluttered, and it's very confessional. And he finds a way to say the things the way that he sees the world, it just in the kind of a language that we really can can understand and take in. And I've always loved that about Brandon. Beyond that, Brandon is just, he's always been one of those guys as an artist who's looked at the world carefully, that he's also gotten himself invested in it, always willing to help out on an initiative or things that make the world a better place. And then Brandon also exceptional roller skater. There might be photos out there somewhere of a tour that he was a part of with the Jars of Clay, and where there are some great photos of us on roller skates. So that's all I'll say. Let's welcome Brandon Heath to the show. Brandon, how are you today?
I'm doing great. You know what? I've lost those photos. Please resend those to me.
Oh, I will. I'll send them out to you. Yeah,
I haven't lost the memories. They're still there. So.
Yeah, it's good times. So Brandon, a lot of the times the first question I've been asking artists, because we started this whole show around the COVID-19 crisis when everyone was really kind of stuck in their homes. And for artists, a lot of times it's been an anxious season. It's been a time where, a lot of people would think, well, you're not touring anymore, so maybe you're just working on music or able to just spend some time really honing your craft. But it's been a difficult season for a lot of artists to really feel like they could get their footing. It's been unsettling, just as it has been for everyone else. So I like to ask, just how has this season been for you? Has this been a creative time for you? Has it been an anxiety-producing season? What's it been like for you?
That's a great question, Dan. At the very beginning, there was a lot of anxiety, which I don't mind confessing and sharing that I lean into my anxiety more than I probably should, and lean in meaning I let it rule me more than I should. I think like all of us, we just didn't know what to do with this. We've never experienced, many of us have not in our lifetimes have experienced a pandemic that shuts down the country. And then you throw in that, all my concerts canceled or postponed. And so you start to factor in, okay, well, this is my livelihood as well. I'm okay to stay home, but I'm not making any money staying home. So you start, you go down the spiral of fear. Yeah. And I did that at first. I even spent about 3 days in my room quarantined because I had a severe headache, and I had just been somewhere previous to lockdown. I shook about 250 hands. It was a big meet and greet. And so, who knows if I had it or not. My poor wife, I heard her with the girls. I slept in the guest bedroom, and I would hear her waking up the girls in the morning, just wanting to help. But, thankfully, I got through that very short, 2-week fear mongering, season.
Yeah.
And I just kind of landed in this place of acceptance, and that there is literally nothing I can do about any of this. And so really this whole season has turned into a season of trust. And is God really bigger than all of this? I think he is. I believe that he is.
Yeah.
And so I have to lean into that. And I'm actually really thankful for that.
Yeah, that's a good lesson to kind of come away with in this season. I think we're all having to work those muscles of faith and just trust that the story that's being written is bigger than all of us, and we can't necessarily decide where it's going. It's not a choose your own adventure where we are just part of something bigger. So yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, Brandon, it's so great to have you on the show today. I've loved your music for a long time. I've been just a fan, and would love to hear you play some music for us today. Are you able? You've got a guitar there, so I
have a guitar.
Love to have you play.
I would love. I'm way better at playing music than I am talking. So I figured maybe I would start with one that some of your viewers and listeners would know. And it's kind of timely for what's going on in the world right now. So I'll do this one.
great.
Look down from a broken sky, traced out by the city lights. My world from a mile high, best seat in the house tonight. Touchdown in the cold black top, hold on for the sudden stop. Breathe in the familiar shock of confusion and chaos. All those people going somewhere. Why have I never cared? Give me your eyes for just 1 second. Give me your eyes so I can see everything that I keep missing. Give me your love for humanity. Give me your arms for the broken-hearted, ones that are far beyond my reach. Give me a heart for the ones forgotten. Give me your eyes so I can see. Yeah, 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 yeah. Step out on a busy street, see a girl in our eyes meet. Does her best to smile at me, to hide what's underneath. There's a man who's to her right, black suit and a bright red tie. Too ashamed to tell his wife he's out of work, he's buying time. All those people going somewhere. Why have I never cared? Give me your eyes for just 1 second. Give me your eyes so I can see everything that I keep missing. Give me your love for humanity. Give me your arms for the broken-hearted, ones that are far beyond my reach. Give me a heart for the ones forgotten. Give me your eyes so I can see. Yeah, 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 yeah. Been here a million times, a couple of million eyes, just moving past me by. I swear I never thought that I was wrong. I want a second glance, so give me a second chance to see the way you've seen the people all along. Give me your eyes for just 1 second. Give me your eyes so I can see everything that I keep missing. Give me your love for humanity. Give me your arms for the broken-hearted, ones that are far beyond my reach. Give me a heart for the ones forgotten. Give me your eyes so I can see. Give me your eyes, oh, give me your eyes. Everything that I keep missing. Give me a heart for the broken-hearted. Give me your arms. Give me your eyes. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yep.
Thanks,
That's the kind of song that matters this season. Something we all need. That's a great prayer for all of us. Wow. So Brandon, you've got something new coming out, right? Is this when I was talking to you, you're kind of alluding to getting ready to have some new music out?
I'm working on a new record, but I just put a single out about a month ago. Right. My first independent release, actually, which is a big deal for me. Yeah.
So no more label involvement, just kind of your own thing.
I don't know if no more is the case, but for right now, I'm flying solo.
Good.
Without a label, it's actually kind of fun.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, and that's been pretty freeing for you. Has it felt pretty liberating?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. It's very liberating. I could literally put a song up right now and it would be out to the world tomorrow.
Right.
And that is actually an exciting place to be as an artist. No matter how you feel about technology these days, with music and distribution, but for me, it's actually a really encouraging time. I I have actually been, and you asked earlier, I've felt more creative in this season than usual. And so that's actually been very great for, for creativity and songwriting and producing songs, which has been fun. Nice.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad for that. Always can use more Brandon Heath music in the world. So that's fantastic. Do you, would you be willing? I know we're kind of short on time with you today. I know you've got other things to do. And so thanks for being with us for as long as you have. And I appreciate it. Do you got time to play one more for us? Would you
absolutely. I do. Yeah. Great. I actually tuned into the show from the beginning, and I really appreciated the conversation, I think truth is an interesting topic, for me, I want the truth. I've always wanted the truth. But I don't know that I've always been true to myself. And so I think what's going on in the world really makes us, it causes us to ask ourselves questions, and which I think Jesus was in the habit of asking us questions. And somewhere in there where the Holy Spirit lies is the truth. And so I think we've just got to be willing to access that truth. I'm a people watcher. I haven't been traveling a lot, but I love to watch people in airports and train stations. And one of my favorite things to do is to ride the train in Chicago. So this is about that experience. It's called Faces on a Train. I'm the first one on at the Ashland station. Got a long way to go to my destination. Yeah, always riding the same OC. Right in the middle where I can see faces on a train. Faces on a train. There's a woman thumbing paper in a company folder. Black leather bag hanging off her shoulder. With a pinstripe suit and her hair pulled back. She's a company woman on the management track. Faces on the train. Faces on the train. All just faces on the train. There's an old man sitting with his hands in his lap. From a ticket tape world where they all wore hats. And I wonder why he rides alone. If there's anybody waiting when he gets back home. Faces on the train. Faces on the train. I don't know you, I don't know you, I don't know nothing about you. You don't know me, you don't know me, you don't know nothing about me. I wish I knew you, wish I knew you, wish I knew something about you. I wish you knew me, I wish you knew me. Faces on the train. Faces on the train. Door slide open and a couple walks in. He hangs on the rail, she hangs on to him. And I can't be sure, but it might be love. 'Cause the old man smiles and his eyes well up. Faces on the train. Never there early, but we're always on time. We'll go our own way at the end of the line. And you don't know me and I don't know you, but we shared the same air for a minute or two. On a train, faces on a train. Wish I knew you, wish I knew you, wish I knew something about you. I wish you knew me, I wish you knew me, I wish you knew something about me. All just faces on the train.
Yeah. Brandon, thanks. So good.
So good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brandon Heath, for being with us today. It's just good to see you. Good to know things are moving forward and you're being able to be creative. We look forward to keep hearing new music from you. So thanks again. I guess we'll kick this back to John.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brandon. Really appreciate it. Brandon, David, Dan, everybody, so good to be on the air with you. So good to do this show. So encouraged every day that I show up with this wonderful set of friends. I hope it encourages you some too, through this darkness, through the despair, that God still got it. We're living to find that life that is truly life, and God promises. Asking you shall receive, seeking you shall find, knock and the door shall be open to you. So keep on asking and seeking and knocking, it will be found. So thanks for being with us all. God bless you, and keep fighting the good fight out there until we're with you next. Bye now.